G'day legends, I hope you're all amazing. I'm lucky enough to have my hands on the new Helix Stadium XL. This is one of the most hotly anticipated gear releases for a long time. Big thank you to Tom and the team at Line 6 and Yamaha in Australia for letting me borrow this to make a couple of videos. You just heard the new Agora 2203 amp model in there. Rather than take you through all the brand new specs and all the ad copy for the Helix Stadium XL, if you're watching this, you're probably all across it. Line 6 have put out some very comprehensive videos. If you visit their website, there's even some very cool interactive tools that let you check out what various new controls do. But the long and the short of it is it's a hardware upgrade for the Helix, and then there's a brand new amp modeling engine along with some very cool touchscreen specific features on here. So I guess the highlight from the hardware perspective is the touchscreen, and when it comes to digital modeling units, this is probably far and away the best touchscreen I have used on a modeler to date. It's really, really nice. It feels as close to using a tablet or a phone as anything else that I've tried out there. For example, if you want to access all your settings, you just kind of press up here. You can see you can get to Command Center, your downloads, you can connect it to Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and Ethernet. You can access all your global settings over here. You can access your presets on here. Factory presets and user presets have their own folders on there. For example, if I want to bring up, say, the Agora Plexi preset that I put together over here, I'll just bring that up. And if you've used a Helix before, this is a Helix, but more so. You know, if you want to edit a block, you've got the ability to just touch it over here. You've still got the capacitive touch switches. I said that right first time. I'm so proud of myself. You know, if I want to edit, say, the Flexo Vibe, I just touch it on there. That's what the original Helix has, but I do have the option now to touch on here, scroll across. I've got a whole bunch of encoders. Everything's laid out really, really nicely as I would have expected on here. You know, you've got your home page. If you want instant access to the amp, you press that button over there. I should really demonstrate that by being on a different block. So you want to get the amp settings. Boom, there you are. The big feature that I'm keen to try out and just demo a little bit in this video is if you come up here, you have this focus view. And essentially what this is, it's like a two-dimensional little grid on here where each quadrant is going to give you a specific set of sounds. So I'll give you an example of that. You can see you've got Red, Cliffs, Plexi-Full, and Rembrandt over here. And if I just play and drag around on the touch screen, it's going to interpolate between those different extremes. terms of usability and general playfulness, that's easily one of my favorite new features on here. The other one is the new hype control, which I know a lot of people are very keen to hear what it sounds like. So we'll come back to this Plexi preset. I'm fairly certain I have something very high gain. Let's try the new Agora Boogie Mark II C Plus model over here. And what I'll do is I will do this. I'll come over to the amp and I'll swipe all the way across. I could have used these little buttons over here. Come all the way to this new hype control over here. So currently it is off. I do have the amp boosted, so I'll turn the boost off. There's some pitch detune on there, but you know, life's too short not to use pitch detune. Let's have a listen to what hype does as I turn it up. Let's do the same thing with the 2203. This is the new Agora 2203. Now, cranking it all the way up to 10, you can hear it's really smoothing out the top end, it's exaggerating the low end, it's almost like a mastering control on there. I think it can take some of the character out of an amp like a 2203, where all that ugly stuff in the high mid-range is what makes the amp cut through a mix. So I would probably use the hype control just a little bit on there, just to bring out that something extra that I might want out of an amp model on there. I think it's a really cool idea and it's definitely well implemented. Same thing with this focus mode on here. I think focus mode, especially for the amps, if you're dialing in a new amp from scratch, rather than going, I'm gonna turn the gain where it's in the sweet spot and then find the sweet spot in the bass, the middle, and the treble, having these kind of idealized snapshots that you can move around in between is a really awesome feature. I'll show you another preset that I put together. Let's try the AC30 again. This is the new Agora AC30 model on here. I think I've arranged this into some snapshots. I certainly have on here. So I'll just play through the 5 snapshots. I mentioned earlier that in the global settings, you've got Command Center, and Command Center, again, it's one of the real strong points of the Helix ecosystem. It's on here. It's even easier to dial in with the touchscreen because you just go, what foot switch do I want to change over here? I can do that. And, you know, I've done some pretty vanilla stuff on here. There's nothing too exciting, or it's just snapshot 1 to 5, tap tempo and tuner. You do have the ability to sort of have this A/B switch over here. In the case I've got it, I've just got my main preset view over here and then preset selection. So let's hear the good old AC30. most of my life in the high gain realm, but I do have to say I've been really impressed by the lower to mid gain tones with the new Agora amp models, as we heard with that AC30. I think my favorite new model in here though is the overhauled Soldano SLO. This is where I've got it set at the moment. I like that you've got the real switches on the amp model over here. Like there's the overdrive, there's the crunch or normal mode. Of course, I'm going to start with the overdrive mode on here. A couple of snapshots again, and what I will do is I'll just let you hear the crunch mode and the clean mode as well as we go. Very, very nice indeed. I'm actually going out of tune a little bit, so I will press and hold the tuner, and I'll do my best to talk through some more features while I tune my guitar. Having the massive screen on here, as you can see, is very, very handy. You can set up the tuner source, whether the tuner is going to mute while it's on or run signal through over there. You can change the reference pitch, all the kind of usual stuff you would expect. There's always a D string on this guitar that goes. Nevertheless, I think I should be somewhat more in tune. All right, let's keep going. These are all presets that I just made from scratch. And one thing that I really appreciate is with this, if you're connected to the same Wi-Fi network, you can get the editor with no cables on there. And what I was able to do was actually import all my favorites from my HX Stomp library. So as an example, let's just hear this German extra blue amp model on here. And if I wanted to swap out one of the effects, I've created a bunch of new favorites in here, but I've also imported all of my old favorites. So if you're somebody who's been using a Helix, whether it's for a short time or a long time, you've probably got a bunch of favorites. You can just import those with the app. I love that. Should have mentioned as well, I'm using my free cab IR for most of these on here. There's a whole bunch of new cabinets in here. I haven't had the time to go through them. For me, when I'm trying out a new piece of gear, I like using my own cab as a reference source. That way I can compare it to everything else I have here in the studio. Nevertheless, let's hear, what amp model was it? This is the Ecstacy, cool. That combination of the touchscreen and these foot switches on here just makes assigning new things so easy. You saw there, I just went through my favorites, found a block that I wanted to add this Electric Mistress model, and then I was able to assign it to a foot switch. I don't have to menu dive on there. I don't have to do anything too advanced. It's just like, oh, I can see that thing. I want to put it here, so I'll press and hold this, then I'll use the touchscreen to say, yes, I want to assign it. Furthermore, I like that you've got the option of having a momentary or a latching switch on there. So if you wanted something to do like a whammy bar dive or an octaver every now and then, you could have it set up for a momentary switch. This is just so well thought out on here. Let's do this. Let's go back home and let's hear another preset in here. I'm going to grab a Strat and let you hear the new Deluxe reverb model in here. All right, let's hear this US Lux black neck pickup of this Fender Ultralux vintage Strat. I'm going to bring a couple of different effects in, but first I want to hear what the hype control does on one of these lower gain amp models. The Strat, let's hear the Hiwatt model in here. Classic clean pedal platform. I've got the Kinky Comp happening in the Dynamics tab over there. I've got an Electric Mistress up front. I've got two drives. One is the valve driver, the other is the triangle fuzz. I've got an Elephant Man delay in here, which I love the sound of. And I've also got a duct delay at the end. I'm using the dynamic hall. One thing I was never in love with the original Helix were the reverbs. I kind of could tolerate dynamic plate and dynamic hall, but compared to, I guess, their peers in the modeling ecosystem, I just didn't get on with the reverbs. But the reverbs I like a little bit more on here. They're still not my absolute favorites, but dynamic plate and dynamic hall on here I think work really well. So again, let's go to that neck pickup. nice indeed. While we're here, let's check out Showcase. This is, to me anyway, the most curious feature, and it's what turns the Stadium XL from just another guitar multi-effects or modeler into what I think is probably a new tier of product for guitar players, a guitar workstation. It's Showcase, and essentially it lets you load up backing tracks. So you hit the little music icon over here. You can see I've just loaded in a backing track that I made from some stems that I purchased from the band The Midnight, the song River of Darkness. I love all their stuff, and it's very cool that they sell their stems on Bandcamp. I'm not affiliated with them at all, but they're a great band. You should support them. And I made a backing track out of it. Now, the whole idea here is you've got your guitar processor and your backing track player integrated into a single unit. And you can do things like have automation in here. You use these little flags and drop them on the timeline, and they can do a lot of things. They can be simple markers on there. They can recall presets or snapshots, trigger the looper, trigger the external amp switching relay, send MIDI and hotkey commands on there. It really is designed to be the heart of a live playback rig. I would personally get a lot of use out of this for some of the live looping duo gigs that I do with a singer. Basically, for each song, I'd probably just bring in a drum loop that would automatically have the tempo set for the song, and then I can use this, have a bunch of snapshots for different tones, trigger the looper on there, have everything quantized and synced, and it's all in one box, and it's really easy to edit with the touch screen. So let's do this somewhere at the start. I will drop a preset and snapshot. So it's just going to be this preset that I'm currently on. Let's make it, I don't know, snapshot number 3 or snapshot number 2 for a lead sound. We've got that one on there. And let's say I navigate somewhere else on the timeline. I drop a new flag and let's have a different snapshot. Let's bring up snapshot number 5. Why not? We'll do that just to give you a quick idea of how the automation works. When I press play, what it's going to do is it will start playing the song. It will recall that snapshot. When it gets to that part of the song, it will recall the next snapshot. Kind of like magic. The other cool thing, if I want to manage levels, I can just press my output over here. I'm using the 1/4 inch output. So you can see the backing track. This track is quite loud, so I'm going to bring that down. I've got my main preset. I can control the USB outputs and the Bluetooth. This is so nicely integrated on here. All right, let's go over to, actually, I'm just going to hit play in Showcase and maybe play along. Like magic, it changed the snapshots for me. So you could go through an entire song, set this up, have all your preset snapshot changes. If you're using it with an external amp, have it trigger the channel, send MIDI commands to other units. It's a very nice feature on there. I'm gonna pull up stumps for now because, like I said, I'm just kind of scratching the surface on here. I wanted to share some of my first impressions on here. I'd love to hear from all of you. What would you like to see and hear me take a look at in the new Helix Stadium XL? Do you want to hear some comparisons between the old amp models and the Agora amp models? Do you want some tutorials on how to dial in various effects and use the unit? I've got it for a couple of weeks here and I really want to make the most of my time with it. I just really hope that Line 6 come out with a Stadium Stomp at some point because I love this functionality with the touchscreen. You can tell there's been hundreds of hours put into making this easy to use. The UI is fantastic. Like I said, it's probably the best touchscreen on a modeler at the moment, and stuff like Showcase really does make it, in my opinion, a slightly different product. It's a workstation to me, and especially when they add proxy, which is going to be their capture profiling technology in there. I'll be really interested to see how they incorporate that, because I know there's a bunch of people out there who have used the Helix and they love it, and I know there's a bunch of people out there who just don't get on with the Helix amp modeling. Like I said, I think the Stadium XL is just a Helix, but more so the hardware definitely feels like a big upgrade on there. I am going to do some comparisons between the old models and the new models on there just to have a listen to what they sound like on there. And I think if you're already in the Helix ecosystem, you know, you've been using a Helix or a Stomp for a long time and you want to upgrade, this is going to be an absolutely bunter piece of gear. I'm really excited to see where they go with it because, like I said, there's a new Agora modeling engine in there, which sounds really good. There's a bunch of new amp models, but I'm really looking forward to what they do with new effects and making use of things like focus view in here. I'm actually going to play you all out with the focus view on this. What is this? A ping pong delay over here. Maybe let's try it on the dual delay. I'll turn that one on. I will turn the ping pong off over here. It's just such a really cool feature and it's playful. I think that's the thing that they've kind of centered on here. So I know there are some new features to be added. There's still some bugs and early things that are happening with this. I think like any piece of gear, it's probably worth evaluating it after a year, 2 years, 5 years after it's come out. You know, the original Helix was a big step up for Line 6 at the time, and it really evolved in a lovely way. So I'm excited to see what they do with the new effects on there. If they ever come out with a Stomp, that will be an almost instant buy for me, because while I love the big floorboard on here, this is just way too chunky for me. I know it's going to be perfect for a bunch of other people out there, but like a Stomp size version of this with the showcase feature in there and all the effects and proxy whenever they get that out, it's going to be very, very nice. All right, I've got the Boogie Mark II C+. I got, you know, dual detune, the dynamic plate, there's a clon boosting it. I'll just move around in focus view for these beautiful dual delays. If you like what I'm doing here on the channel and you want to support me directly, you can sign up to my Patreon and get a bunch of exclusive content. You can listen to the music that I make with my band Ragdoll. You can buy my presets for the HX Stomp or the Helix Stadium XL. I'll put all of these presets and a bunch more along with my favorites up on my Gumroad page. It's linked in the video description. You can get my free IR that I've used throughout this video as well. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on the new Stadium XL. And I can't believe I made it through this video without playing the riff just yet. Have a great day. I'll see you next time. Thank you.